we're using blowpipes like I'll use here in a minute, we put those in a dry bucket because you don't want the water shooting out of that hot blowpipe. Also, getting condensation inside the blowpipe can really cause it to be a hot pipe later. So we do a dry bucket for our blowpipes, and that takes a while longer to cool. And you'll actually hear shattering glass throughout the day when I'm blowing things because it doesn't go in water and sizzle. It's just there and cools and then eventually bursts.
That water bucket ends up with a rainbow assortment of crushed glass at the bottom.
Yeah, it's 99% clear with little bits of color. I used to recycle it, take it to the recycling center. Now I save it because, like I said, there's only 4 suppliers of this glass in the world. And if for some reason the shipping channel is shut down or something, I'll have a ton of punty glass. And I do know some artists that melt it down. I can melt that back down in my furnace and use it. However, it will be kind of hazy, gray, and maybe have some strands of color in it.
Have you ever done an apple?
I have attempted an apple. It's funny, I've had a lot of requests for apples. I think I've made 1 apple, and it turned out okay. The tricky part for me was the body of the apple was pretty straightforward. It was the stem and the leaves that I was having a hard time imagining. But people definitely make apples. I have one in the shop that's like a Murano piece. So Dawn asked how the research and development works as far as like if I wanted to learn how to make an apple. I can figure it out a lot quicker now than I could have 3 years ago. Like I said, it would be that stem and leaf pattern. There's a certain crimping tool that you need to make those little leaves that actually have the lines in it. My version of research and development is when I come upon projects like the Easter egg thing, or I made 100 pint glasses for the county. Every employee of the county got a pint glass last year, and it was a gift from the county commissioners to the city employees. I was really honored to do that because that's our kind of quintessential item. My best-selling item is my pint glass. Probably my lowest margin item too, because they're tough and they don't always turn out 100%. But I did a lot of experimenting with color during that project because I was trying to make them all different. And I found some new tricks, and that's how things seem to come to me. I mean, this is what I do literally every day. I have a chance to blow for myself. I go to my gallery, I look at what I'm lacking, color, shape, and then I just start making things to try and fill those holes. So the pint glass is something that Russell and Jake started doing back in the 90s, I would guess. They're essentially a tall, 16 to 20 ounce glass. And I was brewing beer at Terminal Gravity at the time I started blowing glass, and they have a mug club, if you will, there. So I knew about these glasses. I had several of my own, but I'd never seen them made until Jake invited me to come down to Moonshine Glass over in Wallowa, and it just blew my mind, no pun intended, to see how much work and focus went into making this cup. It's a really special item for us, so I'm going to make one of those now. I'm going to use a color that was one of Jake and Russell's favorites, called Irish. So it's a silver blue, and I'm going to make a clear bubble of glass. I'm going to roll another gather of glass through some silver blue and wrap it all around this piece while it's molten. And as I blow, that's going to spread out like a web. And then at the end of the process, I'm going to turn that silver blue silver with a fuel-rich flame. So that's one of the really special parts about this K44. They started calling it Irish because there was a misprint on one of the labels when they got it. It said Irish. And so they just kept calling it Irish, but it's Irish with blue. For this piece, I'm going to use a blowpipe. Instead of a punty, this is another stainless steel tool that has a hole all the way through it, and there's a mouthpiece here that I can use to blow. So I'm going to gather some molten glass, 2 good sized gathers on this. I'll shape it, get a bubble started, and then I'll do that wrap. You can look into my mouth furnace. And I want you to keep your eyes on this, and then when I open this door, you'll see the rim of that bowl. So see the back rim of that bowl? Let your eyes adjust for a few seconds, and about 8-9 inches from the top of that bowl, you'll see the level of glass. What I do is I just lower this into that pool of glass as I'm turning, and I get a gather like that. That's one of the things that I do in my classes. shaping this gather of molten glass on the marber, cooling the sidewalls a little bit. And then I'm actually going to blow a little bubble into this glass. So I don't know if you can see this. But I've blown a breath of air in there and I've trapped my thumb over the end of that blowpipe, capturing my breath, and my breath will expand and push a bubble into there. So we call that a starter bubble. And now I'll let this cool, get another gather over it, blow a little bit more. Alright, so my second gather of glass gives me enough glass to make a good size drinking vessel up. Last time I used a block, a wooden block saturated in water to shape this piece. Right now I'm going to use a piece of wet newspaper that does the same thing. So this wet newspaper I can hold in my hand and use it as an adjustable mold. I'll just come in and slowly roll and shape that piece in my hand. You can see that layer of steam. And now I'll continue to blow this bubble out a little bit more. See that bubble grow there? Alright, so that bubble is blown out enough now to where I can start a constriction line. As we make these glasses, the walls get thinner and they cool faster, so the trips to the forge increase quite a bit, and we're doing a lot of back and forth from the bench to the forge. So I'm going to cut this constriction line in just off the end of the blowpipe through that bubble. This will end up being the break-off point for this piece, and also eventually become the lip of this cup. We don't break the piece off from here and put it away. We break it off after attaching a puntey to the bottom so I can do some surgery to that lip and spread it out into a nice vessel, which you'll see here in a minute. I call it a transfer. So I've established that jack line. I'm going to blow a little more. Okay, so my bubble's about halfway blown out. I'm going to hang this piece up on a pipe hanger and get my gather of glass for my silver blue wrap. So I'll get a gather of molten glass on the end of a puntey, maybe two. So I'll start with a small gather which I cool. And I'll quickly get another gather and roll it through that blue. And while I'm rolling it through this silver blue, I'll also shape it into a point. And this molten glass fuses to that broken up colored glass called frit. Now I'm going to enter the forge with that wrap and hold my piece while keeping it hot at the same time. And then I'll come back to the bench and take this molten wrap of silver blue and spin it around all over this bubble. So, just like this, we come in and paint on a web of color. Like that. So now I'm back to the heat to melt that wrap into that cold piece, and I'll continue the blowing process. So I've got it molten hot again. I'll check in on this jack line, make sure that it's cool enough to not expand while I blow. Also, you want to a nice sharp jack line to be able to break free with a gentle tap. So now I'll blow a little more. And now more heat. I don't know how well you can see from there, but I have a round bubble and I want a cylinder. So I'm going to use a little centrifugal force to swing this out and stretch that round bubble into a cylinder shape. So I get it hot to the molten state again. And now I swing it like a pendulum. And gravity and centrifugal force are working for me, stretching that into a cylinder. Again, reestablish that jack line, make sure I have a nice sharp line established. A little bit of beeswax here for lubrication. We're getting there. My top of my cup, I have the thickness established that I'd like, so I'm not going to heat that as much. I'm heating mostly the bottom of this bubble where it's a little thicker. I'll elongate it a little bit more, and then I'll flatten the bottom of that bubble. So a nice swing here. I'll use the newspaper here to cool the sides of that piece, and then blow one more time. I'm cooling the sides, so when I blow here, the bottom goes, not the sides. So I'll use this wooden paddle in a second to flatten the bottom of this bubble right here. Give that a nice flash. Focus the heat on the bottom of the bubble so it squishes flat and the rest of the cup stays where I want it to. So I'll look down the piece, make sure that I'm putting this bottom on nice and straight. No one wants a leaning cup. And I'll use this graphite finger here to push the bottom in a little bit. I finish my vessels with a stamp, and I don't want that stamp protruding and hitting the table. So there's the body of the vessel. I'll flash it in the forge again, and now I'm going to break it free of the blowpipe. This is what I was describing earlier. It's called the transfer. So I give it a heat there in the forge so it will survive this weight. I'll hang it here. I'll grab a small gather of glass on a punty, and I'll shape that small gather into a point. We also call that a punty. It's a punty on a punty. We want about a 1/4 inch of glass off the end, slightly tapered like so. Now I'll grab my piece, give it another quick flash in the forge, keep my punty hot, and then I'll come to the bench, find a resting spot for this piece where it doesn't want to roll all over, right about there. I'll grab these tweezers and grab a hold of my punty and attach it to the bottom. It instantly fuses to the piece. Now I'm cooling that neckline a little bit more. I'm also stretching my punty off with my left hand so I can put a miniature constriction, basically a version of that jack line, on that punty, and that leaves me a button of glass behind for my stamp. Now I dip my hand in water. I put a couple of drips of water right on that cooled neckline, and then a tap sends a vibration through the steel and breaks it free of the blowpipe like that. So I'm back to the heat quickly before I have any additional cracking. It's a little tricky to get the heat just right for that transfer where it breaks on that cooled line and nowhere else. So I'm getting the lip, which is the area on that broken neckline, molten hot. I'm going to stretch that lip out and cut it off. And then I'm going to finally open this up into a drinking vessel. The reason we do this is to establish a thickness that we like and get rid of tool marks if there are any. So I'll use these tweezers here to stretch that lip out, make sure my bottom's sitting straight, come in and just do little pinches and pulls here. And I'm paying close attention to the thickness of the glass right below these tweeze marks, because that's going to be the finished lip. So about like that, I stretched it out. Now I'll heat it up and cut it off. So to cut the lip off, I use a small pair of shears. And I enter that opening at an angle, and then I straighten out and follow that line until I meet it again. Just like that. And now I'll heat that lip area again one more time. And the tools called jacks that I use to cut that constriction line in with, I'll hold them horizontally and enter the opening of this piece and apply a little pressure. It's kind of like turning pottery a little bit. So I'll enter that opening and just apply gentle pressure as I'm turning. Try to get a nice, evenly shaped piece. Hit it with the back of my jacks there, make sure it's nice and straight. And I'll do one more opening for this piece. I use this torch to heat the putty a little bit. And again, just nice gentle pressure, giving that lip a little bit of flair. Okay, there's a finished cup. I just have to break it off with this punty. I'm gonna use this torch to turn it silver first. So one small drop of water right on that punty constriction shocks that punty, makes it cold enough to break free. And now I'll use this small torch to get that button of glass hot. I have a stamp here that I carved out of graphite 5 years ago. Rushwood graphite. It looks like the head of Wallowa Lake. So I put that image into the bottom of the glass. And then I'll grab these tongs and gloves and put it away before it gets too cold and cracks. See if I can walk it by so you can see what it looks like here. So it's a nice bright silver on the outside with a kind of cobalt bluish green on the inside. Oh, thank you. I don't get burned too often. If I do, they're small little burns from like touching a tool that's hot or something. And as you see, I'm not covered with scars. So I think that's probably more common for a glassblower to cut themselves, especially if they're doing cold working when they're grinding the glass and stuff. It's all a certain set of dance moves that you kind of get down. You can't see this on camera, but there's about 80 people behind you here. Thanks for joining.